Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving into a really powerful idea based on these sources we've got. It's all about the missional heart of God and what that means for the church, for global evangelism.
Right.
Our mission here really is to unpack what it means for mission to be, well, not just something we do, but part of who God is.
Yeah.
And crucially, what that means for you listening. So let's get into it.
It's interesting, how these sources really flip the script on how we often think about mission.
How so?
Well, instead of seeing it as like our project, something we start, or maybe a church program,
Okay.
they point to it starting in God, in God's own nature.
That feels like a huge shift right off the bat, a fundamental reorientation.
It is.
And the sources, they use this term Missio Dei, Latin, right?
That's it. Yeah. Missio Dei. Basically, the mission of God. And the core idea is that God is the main actor here. Mission isn't, first and foremost a human thing or a church plan. It's God's own redemptive work already happening, already in motion in the world.
So we're kind of invited into his mission, not the other way around.
Exactly that. It shifts the weight, you could say. The responsibility isn't just on our shoulders.
Right. It's grounded in God's own initiative.
Precisely. And they root this beautifully, I think, in the Trinity.
Okay, how does that work?
Well, think about it. The Father sends the Son sends the Spirit, and then the Triune God, Father, Son, Spirit, together sends the church.
Ah, so it's a sending chain almost.
Kind of.
Yeah.
But it's not just a reaction. It flows from the eternal, loving relationship within the Godhead. It's like an overflow.
Okay.
An overflow of divine love aiming to draw all creation back into worship, back into relationship with Him.
So the church's mission then, it's not primarily about our great strategies or, big budgets.
Not primarily, no.
But more about participating, aligning ourselves with what God is already doing.
That's the heart of it. It really emphasizes depending on God, not just our own efforts or cleverness.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And this perspective, it offers a really important correction, actually. It pushes back against those anthropocentric models, human-centered one.
Which is sometimes dominated, maybe, historically.
For sure. This encourages humility, deep listening to other cultures, real contextualization. Because you start realizing God's already active, maybe in ways you didn't expect.
That is a powerful shift.
Yeah.
Moving from trying to, make mission happen for God to figuring out where God's already working and just joining in.
Yes. Joining Him there. Recognizing His purposes are way bigger than anything we could cook up on our own.
Right. Bigger than our plans.
And ultimately, the goal isn't just building our own little empires or programs.
No,
it's about seeing God's kingdom expand, seeing God glorified among all peoples.
Okay, building on that idea of glorification, several sources bring up John Piper's statement. It's incredibly sharp. Missions exist because worship doesn't.
Ooh.
That feels like a punch to the gut, but, in a good way.
It really distills it, doesn't it? Mission arises because there are still people, whole groups, who haven't met God yet, who aren't offering Him the worship He deserves.
So it's that absence of worship that drives it.
That's the core idea. It compels God's people to go, to invite everyone into the joy and the fulfillment of knowing and worshiping the one true God.
So worship isn't just like a side activity in mission, something we tack on.
Not at all. It's both the engine and the destination.
Explain that a bit more, the engine.
Well, vibrant worship in us, in our churches, that's the fuel. It ignites passion for God's glory everywhere. It sustains people through the hard times.
Okay.
It keeps our motives right. Are we building His kingdom or just our own thing? And it, invites God's power.
And the destination, the goal.
That's where the sources point to Revelation 7, that amazing vision.
Oh, yeah.
A great multitude that no one could number, from every nation, tribe, people, and language.
Standing before the throne and the Lamb.
Crying out, salvation belongs to our God and to the Lamb. Yeah, breathtaking.
That vision is the end game, isn't it?
It's the culmination, the ultimate point of all the evangelism, the discipleship, the church planting. It's to see that crowd gathered, diverse but united in worship.
So mission is the pathway God set up to get there.
Yeah.
Towards universal worship.
Exactly. It's absolutely central to God's final purposes for everything.
Now, here's where it got really fascinating for me in these sources. They argued this isn't just a New Testament idea or some modern concept.
Right. It goes way back.
They trace this missional thread. Some call it the scarlet throat of redemption, right through the entire Bible. From start to finish, mission isn't an add-on. It's like the main plot.
It's pretty incredible when you see it laid out. God's global heart is there right from page 1.
In creation, Genesis 1 and 2.
Yeah. Humanity made as image bearers reflecting God, and then the command. Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, subdue it.
That's the original missional mandate.
You could absolutely call it that. Multiply image bearers, scatter them across the globe, creatively care for his world. That's mission right there.
Wow. And even after the fall, Genesis 3, when everything gets broken,
Yeah.
God's first move isn't judgment, it's pursuit. Where are you?
That question, it's more than just asking location, isn't it?
It feels like the first missionary question. God seeking out lost humanity, starting the restoration process right there.
Absolutely. Then you jump to Genesis 12, the Abrahamic covenant. Huge turning point.
Right. God calls Abraham.
With this world-changing promise, in you, all the families of the earth shall be blessed.
All the families. That's the global blueprint. Way back then.
Exactly. Israel's election wasn't for, like, special privilege alone. It was election for purpose.
To be a channel.
A channel for God's blessing to flow out to every single nation. And faith, even then, was the way in.
So Israel's job was to be a beacon, a kingdom of priests, a holy nation, a light to the nations.
That was the calling, to live in such a way embodying God's character that other nations would see it and be drawn to him.
But the sources are honest. They didn't always do that well.
Oh, definitely not. They acknowledge Israel's failures, idolatry, injustice, turning inward instead of outward.
And the prophets.
They were constantly calling Israel back, people like Isaiah, Micah, reminding them of their global job, reminding them that justice, caring for the poor and oppressed was part of their witness.
Even Jonah, right. Reluctant missionary, but God's heart for Nineveh, for Israel's enemies, is so clear.
Such a powerful story. And then, ironically, God even used their failures, like the exile.
How so?
When they were scattered among the nations, Babylon, Persia, God used that scattering. Jewish communities popped up everywhere, making God known in unexpected places through unexpected means.
Wow. Okay, so this whole Old Testament story is pointing forward.
Culminating in Jesus. He is Israel's calling lived out perfectly. He's the seed of Abraham, Galatians 3 says, through whom blessing flows to all nations.
And his ministry wasn't just for Jews. He reached out to Gentiles, called himself the light of the world.
Exactly. So when you get to the Great Commission, Matthew 28, it's not really the start of mission.
It's the culmination.
It's the culmination, the continuation, the expansion of that original Genesis purpose. Fill the earth with image bearers, now transformed into disciples through the Spirit.
It's one huge unfolding story. God relentlessly pursuing his creation, wanting worship from everyone.
That's it. One continuous narrative.
Okay, that makes sense. So if this thread runs from creation right through Christ, who's carrying it forward now, the sources seem clear on this.
Yeah, they point straight to the church. The church is God's chosen instrument for mission today.
It's very identity, right? You mentioned the Greek words.
Ecclesia meaning called out, and apostolo meaning sent. The church is called out to be sent. It inherits that apostolic mission.
And the church is both the agent doing the work.
Proclaiming and living the gospel.
And also the result of the work, that diverse community.
Exactly, the instrument and the outcome. Which leads to a really key point in these sources.
Which is?
That missional identity isn't just one thing the church does. It's not just a department.
It's cool.
It's intrinsic, foundational. As one source put it, to be church is to be sent. It's not optional.
Okay, so what does that look like practically? For a local church or for someone listening?
Well, it means the local church isn't just a place to gather on Sunday. It's meant to be a mission base, a sending center.
For everyone, not just the professionals.
Everyone. Critically, every believer is empowered. That whole priesthood of all believers idea, it's missional. Everyone has access to God. Everyone gets to represent him, not just pastors or missionaries.
And mission is broader than just talking, right? It's holistic.
Definitely. Engaging culture, yes, but also things like pursuing social justice, making disciples, living out worship together in community.
So the church becomes like a preview, a foretaste of the kingdom.
That's a great way to put it, a living demonstration showing unity and diversity, embodying that holistic mission right now.
Okay, so we've got the theology, the history, the purpose, the people, the church. Now, how do we bring this down to earth? How do we take this big vision and actually live it out? Get that mission-first mindset today?
Yeah, the practical side. And it starts, I think, by just acknowledging the real challenges. Global evangelism isn't easy.
No kidding.
The sources talk about, cultural barriers, language barriers,
Mm.
needing deep contextualization. Then there's resistance, spiritual, but also relational, maybe mistrust from history.
Resources can be tight too.
Hmm.
And just personal fear, right? Feeling inadequate.
All of that. It can feel overwhelming.
So how do we deal with that?
Well, the sources offer this crucial perspective shift, focusing on faithfulness over just, visible success.
Like that verse, one plants, another waters, but God gives the growth.
Exactly like 1 Corinthians 3:7, the ultimate outcome, the growth. That's not actually on us. That's God's work.
Okay, that takes some pressure off.
It frees us, frees us from having to produce certain results and just roots our efforts in obedience. Our job is faithfulness, trusting Him with the harvest, and prayer. Prayer isn't just prep work.
No.
Prayer is the work, often the greater work. It's the engine, the means through which God acts and empowers.
Okay, so faithfulness, prayer. But how do we navigate those specific challenges? The barriers, the resistance, the fear?
Well, practically, the sources emphasize things like cultural humility, being learners first,
Listening before speaking.
deeply, understanding contexts, then relational witness. The gospel often travels best through real friendships, lived out visibly.
Makes sense.
And a big one, local empowerment. Supporting Indigenous leaders, avoiding those old paternalistic models, building capacity locally.
And not going it alone.
Never alone. Teamwork, community support, being sent by and accountable to a local church, absolutely crucial.
And cultivating this mission-first mindset you mentioned, what does that look like day to day? For a church, for me.
For churches, it often means a conscious shift in vision, looking outward, globally, not just inward at internal needs.
So prioritizing global outreach in the budget. Supporting missionaries well.
Yes, and engaging with global issues, injustices as part of their witness. It often takes courageous leadership, honestly, to challenge comfort zones.
And for us as individuals,
Yeah.
how do we get that mindset?
It starts with reimagining discipleship, maybe. It's not just learning stuff, it's becoming more like Jesus, developing a missional character, seeing the world like He does,
Using our gifts.
mobilizing everyone's gifts and passions for His global purposes, whatever your age, whatever your skill, and making prayer, intentional praying specifically for unreached peoples, the persecuted church, global crises.
And seeing everyday life differently, like
Yeah.
my job, my neighborhood.
Absolutely. Seeing every encounter, every choice, how we use our networks. It's all a platform for kingdom work. Vocational missionality, they call it.
So my work in accounting, or teaching, or art, that can be mission.
It absolutely can be a frontier of mission. It's about integrating God's mission into the fabric of our daily lives, not just sectioning it off. And yeah, overcoming fear and complacency. It takes holding on to that big vision from God's word, thinking strategically about our time and money, and just stepping out in faith, trusting God's power.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. We've covered a lot. The big picture seems to be, mission didn't start with us. It starts with God Himself. The Missio Dei.
Right. It originates in His very being. And it's fueled by worship, driven by His incredible love.
Aiming ultimately to fill the whole earth with worshipers from everywhere.
Every tongue, tribe, nation. And that purpose, that thread, it runs right through the Bible. Genesis, Abraham, Israel, the prophets.
Yeah.
Fulfilled in Jesus.
And now carried forward by the church.
Yeah.
Us, as His chosen instrument.
Yeah.
And understanding that whole story, that depth, that continuity,
Yeah.
it leads us to this mission-first mindset.
Which isn't just about doing more activities.
No, it's about being different, aligning our lives, our churches, our whole communities with God's global heart, His ongoing work.
Yeah, it's moving beyond seeing mission as just a task or a program.
And embracing it as like a posture, a way of life.
A joyful, dependent participation in the huge story God is still writing.
Okay, so here's a final thought then for you listening, something to chew on from this deep dive. If God's mission really didn't start with us, and if it's not ultimately sustained by our strength, what does it truly mean to sort of rest in His work while still actively, courageously playing our part in the story He's writing? How do we hold those together?
That's a great question to ponder. And it brings to mind Habakkuk 2.14. For the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. Wow. That's the promise. That's the plan. That's the pulse of God's heart. So what stands out to you from this deep dive?